Genius and madness are two sides of the same coin. The story of Phil Spector is a tragic illustration of how the man who created one of the greatest musical styles of the 20th century ultimately ended up behind bars, accused of murder. He was a musical idol, an inspiration to the Beatles, John Lennon, and dozens of other artists. But his life is also a story of loneliness, paranoia, fear, and violence. Today we'll tell you about Phil Spector, a man who changed music but was destroyed by his own demons. Phil Spector was born on December 26, 1939 in the Bronx. His family were immigrants. His father, Albert, came from Russia. His mother, Bertra, from America. Life was difficult. The family lived modestly. But the most devastating event was his father's suicide in 1949. Phil was only 9 years old. It was a catastrophe for the boy. On his father's tombstone were the words, "To know him was to love him." Phil later turned these words into the title of his first hit song, but the pain he experienced as a child never left him. From a young age, he was withdrawn, suspicious, and controlling. His classmates considered him strange and painfully shy. Music became his only world. In 1958, Spector and his friends formed the band The Teddy Bears. Their song "To Know Him Is to Love Him" soared to the top of the American charts. But Phil quickly realized the stage wasn't his thing. His true strength lay in producing. By the early 1960s, he founded Phillies Records and began collaborating with female vocal groups. His work with the Ronettes and the Crystals became a sensation. He invented what would become known as the Wall of Sound, a unique recording method in which dozens of instruments were layered, creating a monumental, dense sound. It was a true breakthrough. Critics wrote that Spector's songs sounded like the orchestras of the future. In the 1970s, he worked with the Beatles and personally with John Lennon and George Harrison. He participated in the creation of the album Let It Be. It seemed that Spector would forever go down in history as the greatest music producer. But behind this fame lurked a dark personality. Spector suffered from severe paranoia and aggression. His wife, Ronnie Spector, said he literally kept her locked away. He hid her shoes and installed cameras to monitor her every move. Phil obsessively collected guns. Friends and musicians recalled him pointing a gun directly at them during recording sessions, as if testing who would dare object. He once threatened the Ramones while working on their album. The musicians joked, but sensed something far more dangerous lurked behind this eccentricity. The women he invited to his home later testified that he often threatened them, would suddenly pull out a gun, lock the door, and interrogate them for hours. But his fame and money allowed him to evade responsibility for a time. In the 1980s and 1990s, Spector's career declined. New musical trends supplanted his wall of sound. He became a recluse in his mansion, Pier's Den. The house had everything: luxury, marble, guns. But inside, a lonely man lived, out of touch with reality. He rarely appeared in public, always wearing strange wigs to hide his baldness. He was considered an eccentric but increasingly dangerous. One of the most striking examples of Phil Spector's cruelty is the story of his wife, Ronnie Spector, lead singer of the Ronettes. At the beginning of their relationship, everything seemed like a fairy tale, a talented singer and a famous producer. But soon, the fairy tale turned into a nightmare. Ronnie said that after their wedding, Phil literally locked her in the house. He forbade her from leaving, hid her shoes, surrounded the house with barbed wire, and unleashed vicious dogs to keep her from even trying to escape. He convinced her that without him, she would never be able to survive in show business. Ronnie recalled, "I felt like a prisoner. I stopped being myself. I simply existed in his world." She managed to escape only with the help of her mother. She later said that if she had stayed, Phil would have killed her sooner or later. February 3, 2003, House of Blues Club in Los Angeles. Phil Spector meets Lana Clarkson, a 40-year-old actress who was working as a hostess at the time. Lana had been famous for her roles in 1980s films, but her career had faded. She was charming and cheerful, and that evening she agreed to go with the producer to his home. A conflict erupted between them at the mansion. Neighbors reported hearing loud screams during the night, followed by a gunshot. Lana Clarkson was found dead in a chair. A bullet had passed through her mouth. Spector came out to security covered in blood and uttered the fateful words, "I think I accidentally killed her." Spector claimed Lana had committed suicide. His lawyers built their defense around the theory that she was depressed, but he was confronted with dozens of women's testimonies who said Phil had repeatedly threatened them with guns, locked them out, yelled at them, and become irrational. The first trial in 2007 ended inconclusively. The jury was unable to reach a verdict, but a retrial was held in 2009. There, prosecutors presented compelling evidence that Spector himself fired the shot. In April 2009, he was found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentence was 19 years in prison. Lana Clarkson's mother sat in the courtroom, and her tears became a symbol of the justice she had waited 6 long years for. Among the many stars who encountered Phil Spector was a young Cher. In the early 1960s, she was just beginning her musical career, even before becoming part of the duo Sonny and Cher. Back then, she worked part-time at Phil's studio, sometimes singing backup vocals, sometimes simply sitting in on recordings. Cher recalled that Spector was a man who could create music that sounded like magic, but at the same time, she sensed something disturbing and dark about him. He was extremely demanding, controlling, and intolerant of disagreement. Many years later, when Spector's name became linked to Lana Clarkson's murder, Cher gave an interview in which she frankly admitted that she never harbored warm feelings for him. She stated that she considered him a cold and cruel man. Cher recalled, "He was a genius, yes, but he was also someone who could destroy everything around him. You never felt at ease with him, never safe. Her words were an important insight into Spector's personality outside the studio. Even those who admired his musical talent acknowledged that he exuded danger. For the young Cher, working with him was one of her first career steps. But as she later admitted, it was also a reminder that in the world of show business, behind the glitz and talent, there often lies darkness and violence. Spector spent the rest of his life in prison. His health deteriorated, he suffered from illnesses, and he looked increasingly miserable. The man who once dictated the rules of the music industry was now just an inmate with a prison number. In January 2021, Phil Spector died at the age of 81 in a prison hospital. His life ended as tragically as it had begun. Spector's story remains controversial. On the one hand, he truly was a genius who changed music forever. His wall of sound still inspires musicians. On the other hand, he was a cruel man, a tyrant, and a murderer. For many, his name has become a symbol of how fame and power can turn talent into a monster. Can society separate creativity from personality? Can we admire the music of a man who ruined someone else's life? This is a question that has no clear answer. Phil Spector's story is a warning. Even the greatest minds can be destroyed by their own demons. He was a man who gave the world timeless hits, but he himself will forever be remembered as a murderer. If you watched this video to the end, share your thoughts in the comments. Can geniuses be forgiven for their crimes? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and hit the bell. There are more breathtaking stories ahead.